And we are recording with Dr. Fox, who has been on here once before, who is running for office. And as I just told him, I've been extremely nauseous all day. So, to anybody listening, if I don't sound nearly as animated, it's because I'm not. And so, Dr. Fox is going to do the Lord's work and carry this podcast for me as both the guest and the host. So, Dr. Fox, please introduce yourself to all the new listeners.
Hi, Tommy. I'm Richard Fox. I'm a physician and attorney in Los Gatos, California. Also running for the 16th Congressional District in the House of Representatives here from California. So I'm really delighted to join you again today.
Thank you. So, everything we covered last time, what has changed now? Today is Monday, May 2nd, 2022. What has changed now? What developments have changed? And what do you think you're going to have to focus on more for your campaign?
Well, thank you. So in terms of my campaign, I'm still primarily focused on the COVID issue. As a physician and attorney, I've done a lot of work in that area. I've early on came to the conclusion that early treatment was the way to go. In the beginning, we had hydroxychloroquine, and later we added vitamin D, zinc, and most importantly, ivermectin. A very interesting recent development since we last spoke is that the legislature in the state of Tennessee passed a bill, and it was signed into law by Governor Lee, so that ivermectin is now an over-the-counter drug in the state of Tennessee. I think it's kind of it's kind of a cute story. You know, as you know, Tennessee is horse country, and ivermectin is widely used as a deworming agent for horses. So I guess all of the horse feed and tractor supply stores were selling it anyway. So they decided to make it legal to get it from the pharmacist. So at least the pharmacist could give you some advice as to what's the right dose for you, since you're not the same as a horse. So when I heard that, I started thinking about the difficulty that we've had getting ivermectin here in California. All the chain pharmacies like Walgreens and CVS, they stopped filling my ivermectin prescriptions months ago. So over the last weekend, I had a patient from up in San Francisco who wanted to get some ivermectin, and is not very close to the pharmacies down in my area that will work with me. So we tried getting it for him at a Walgreens in San Francisco, and what do you know, it worked. So maybe the winds are starting to shift a little bit. I have a good friend of mine, Brian Tyson, who's a physician down in El Centro. He works closely with George Fareed, and George has been on your program. So Brian is also running for Congress. He's in the 25th Congressional District down there. And I wish him the very best. As you know, he and George have treated over 10,000 COVID patients, and of those who come to them within the first 5 days of the illness and get started on treatment right away, they've had no deaths at all. That compares with Dr. Fauci, the people following his treatments. We've had 1 million deaths in America of people who followed Dr. Fauci's advice. I think it's pretty clear that early treatment is very, very effective. It's also obviously very safe because in Tennessee, it's over the counter now. I ran into a guy at one of my recent political gatherings who had been taking ivermectin, but he had no idea what the right dose was. He got it from some back channel or other, and the amount he was taking was about 10 times more than I usually prescribe. So I asked him if he had any side effects like nausea, diarrhea, He said, no, really didn't notice a thing. So I was very impressed at also the safety of ivermectin. It seems to be pretty hard to hurt yourself with it. By contrast, we have these vaccines that are neither safe nor effective. Here in California, we've had several pieces of legislation offered that are pending in the legislature. One is to require COVID shots for all employees. They've already done it to all of the public safety workers and state and county and city workers. Now they want to mandate all private employees. And of course, a lot of them have been mandated already by their employers. There's also a bill to mandate the COVID shots for all school children, which I think is really quite outrageous because school children never die of COVID. So school children have nothing at all to gain. The argument used to be that, well, we should vaccinate children to keep them from spreading it to the older folks when they get home. But it's now quite clear that the vaccines don't prevent people from spreading it to other people. So there's just no excuse at all for vaccinating children. And of course, it's not safe in children. There have been quite a few children who've been injured, and a few of them even died due to the myocarditis that the vaccines cause. So we hope that the legislature doesn't enact any of those measures. So if you don't mind, I'd like to go a little bit more into the safety and effectiveness of these vaccines.
Absolutely.
And can I share my screen with you so I can show a few
Yes.
PowerPoints?
Yes, sir.
So let's see, remind me, how do I do that?
I just enabled it. So there should be like a green button at the bottom in the middle of your screen.
Yep.
Share screen.
Okay. Nope, that's the wrong one. Nope.
You're quite all right. Take your time.
I hit the wrong button here. No, I can't get back. Sorry.
You're quite all right.
Let's right. Is that coming across?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so as with any medical treatment, especially the COVID-19 vaccines, these key issues are safety and effectiveness. And so the CDC says the vaccines are safe and effective. So if you believe anything that they say, you're going to be fine. But not everybody takes the CDC at their word. And in fact, if you dig around in their website a little more, you find out that they do allow us how you can get myocarditis and pericarditis in adolescents and young adults. They claim that these reports are rare. Just depends on what you mean by rare. There have been many, many thousands of these cases. So again, myocarditis and pericarditis. They again say reports of death after vaccines are rare. Again, depends on what you mean by rare. The CDC runs this vaccine adverse event reporting system. And you can see that all of the previous years, there were only typically about 100, 125 deaths until we get to 2020. And in that 1 year, it jumped up to about 8,000. So certainly not rare. I'm going to skip that one. This is a very interesting graph because it looks at all-cause mortality. That's people who died of any cause. And we can see early on, there's a spike here where COVID first hit. There are 3 spikes in 2020. And then we have these later spikes in the summer of 2021, and there wasn't that much COVID around then. And a lot of this excess mortality is the vaccines. And then again, when they rolled out the boosters in the January, February of this year, we had another spike of all-cause mortality. Most of the people who, some people die of their COVID injections within the first few days afterward, but it turns out that there's a long tail on that, and we have people dying weeks and even months after their COVID injections. So it gets hard to pinpoint those. One of the interesting things is if you break down that all-cause mortality by age range, and you can see that among the 25 to 44-year-olds, there's a 55% bump in all-cause mortality in that group. People in that age, they're not supposed to be dying. So it's a lot easier to see the COVID deaths because there's not as much background. So for those younger people, 55% increase in all-cause mortality. By the way, this is all CDC data. Down here, it comes from the CDC's website. People 45 to 64 had a 34% increase in all-cause mortality, similar for 65 to 75, and even 75 to 85, a big spike in all-cause mortality during the time that the vaccines were being rolled out. So I think I'll skip some of these slides. So one place where this showed up was that the life insurance companies started getting a bunch of claims for people dying prematurely. And this life insurance firm in Indiana writes employer-sponsored death benefits for employees. So these people are all, of course, working age people. They're all under 65. And because they're covered by their employer death benefit plans. And they noticed that their deaths were up 40% last year, which they said is statistically very, very anomalous because usually the rate of death is pretty constant. So I'm going to try to play this video if I can.
I'm not getting any audio.
Oh, all right. We'll skip that one. But just to say that what his point is that this 40% increase is very startling. Usually in their business, if there's a 10% increase in 1 year, that's such an unusual event that they only expect it to happen once every 200 years. Only once in 200 years do they expect to even have a 10% bump. So to have a 40% bump in this group from 18 to 64 is shocking. They didn't have this bump during the first year of COVID in 2020. This happened in 2021 once the vaccines rolled out. Another place where we're seeing a lot of unusual deaths just since the vaccines rolled out is in competitive athletes. they're dropping like flies on the field of competition, just having cardiac arrests. And well over half of these, they don't survive. So they've had hundreds of professional athletes, particularly soccer players, that have just collapsed on the field. Apparently what's happening is that this is such high intensity exercise that their hearts are working very hard, and they're more susceptible to fatal arrhythmias under those circumstances. So these are young, healthy people that should not be dying. So as we pointed out, the VAERS deaths are up by thousands of percents, but the CDC and the FDA, what they like to say is that, well, just because somebody dies after a vaccine doesn't prove it was caused by the vaccine. And they go out of their way to explain that they don't actually investigate these deaths, so therefore it's not proven to be caused by COVID vaccine. But my point is, if we had a sudden spike in deaths due to airplane crashes, there'd be a lot of investigations and the airplanes would be grounded until they figured out what the cause was. So for the FDA and the CDC to say that these people are dying, but they're not investigating, that's just a cover-up. That's just head in the sand. And in fact, the reason they're not investigating is because they know that it's the vaccines. They just can't admit it. But some non-American investigators looked into this, and their findings were very interesting. The two authors in particular, Dr. Bhakdi and Dr. Burkhart. Dr. Bhakdi has an interesting theory. He's an immunologist, that when the virus attacks you naturally, it comes in through your respiratory tract, your nose, your sinuses, your throat, and it replicates there initially, and before it heads to your vital organs. So you have a chance to develop some immune defenses while the virus is still in your nose and throat. But when you inject the vaccine directly into the muscle, it bypasses that respiratory tract, goes directly to your internal organs, particularly heart, lungs, liver, and kidneys. And that's where the initial encounter with the vaccine, with the COVID RNA occurs, and produces a very different pathology. Dr. Burkhart is a pathologist in Germany, and he autopsied 15 patients between the ages of 28 and 89 who died anywhere between 1 week to 6 weeks, 6 months post-vaccine. These people just sort of dropped dead randomly, apparently due to heart attacks. They were not suspected to die of COVID. They did not have vaccine injury listed on their death certificates. So Dr. Burkhart just took people at random who seemed to just die of heart attacks and strokes, typically at home or at work or on the street. The most common cause of death listed was rhythmogenic heart failure, which in Germany, it's the same as a fatal heart arrhythmia. So in these autopsies, he had some very interesting findings. On the left here is a slide section of normal heart muscle. And on the right, heart muscle from one of his patients who died after getting the vaccine. The one on the left has a darker red stain on it. That's a staining artifact. The one on the right is lighter. The difference in the redness isn't the key finding. The key finding here is on the right, you see a lot of dark purple dots. In the lower right-hand corner, you see a small blood vessel in the heart. All those purple dots are lymphocytes. They're not normally found in this kind of abundance in the heart. And they're all around this blood vessel because that's how the COVID RNA got to the heart, was from being injected in the muscle and then getting into the bloodstream, and then went into the heart. And it attached itself to the endothelium of these blood vessels in the heart. And you got this intense lymphocytic infiltrate. So this is the myocarditis. This is looking at it under the microscope. You can also see in that blood vessel in the lower right-hand corner that there's a bunch of debris there. A lot of that is just sloughed off lining cells from that blood vessel, and they slough off and clump together, and they can block the blood flow through the heart. So you get this myocarditis with the vasculitis. A little closer view, this is again normal heart on the left, and you see all these dark purple lymphocytes that should not be present. This is lung, and normal lung on the left. And on the right, it's a little hard to see, but if you look at the arrow tips, you can see lymphocytic infiltrates in the lung, here in the mid upper left lung field and then the lower right lung field. And they're scattered throughout this tissue. So this is a lymphocytic pulmonary infiltrate. So we've seen that these are not particularly safe. There's a lot of deaths, and they're due to this inflammation of the heart, lungs. So what about effectiveness? So according to the CDC, or the FDA, these vaccines are about 95% effective at preventing infection and preventing hospitalization and death. But it turned out that they only looked at that for the first 2 or 3 months, and then they declared the vaccines to be effective, and then they stopped looking at it after that. But in Israel, they noticed after a few months that the immunity was not lasting. This, I'll just go quickly over this, but
You can take your time. You're fine.
Here we have these bars, in the upper graph, the third group of bars is different time periods, and this is the effectiveness dropping off with the passage of time. The British data is even more striking. They have a pretty good surveillance data in Great Britain. In this graph, the vaccinated patients are the dark black bars, and the light gray bars are the unvaccinated patients. And this is the number of cases of COVID that they had after 10 months after vaccination. So for everybody age 40 or more, you can see that after 10 months, the 18 to 29-year-olds, there's only a slight advantage of the vaccinated over the unvaccinated. By 30 to 39, the vaccinated actually have more cases than the unvaccinated. And by the time you get past 40, the vaccinated are having twice as many cases as the unvaccinated. So what this shows is that not only does the effectiveness wear off after a few months, but after 10 months, the vaccinated are actually twice as likely to get COVID as the unvaccinated. So to call this a pandemic of the unvaccinated is ridiculous. This is a pandemic of the vaccinated. And the recent British data show that most of their hospitalizations and deaths are among the vaccinated. This is a more recent data. It's only about a week or so old. And it's a little dense, but these are cases presenting to the emergency department, and how long and the effectiveness, the rate of effectiveness at preventing COVID cases from coming to the emergency room. After one dose, they had about 50% protection against coming down with COVID. After 2 doses, it got up to around 55%. So that's why we had to start giving these boosters, is because it just the immunity doesn't last. And here, right after getting your booster, the effectiveness was up to 82%. But by 3 months later, it's down to 55%. So even after you get boosted, you're going to need another booster and another booster and another booster. So once you get started on COVID vaccines, you're going to be on a treadmill for the indefinite future, getting boosted every 6 months or so. And we don't even know whether the adverse effects that myocarditis, the lymphocytic pneumonias, we don't know whether that builds up over time. That is, we suspect that each time you get vaccinated, you're more likely to get the complications of the vaccine. So really getting in the vaccine game and getting on the booster treadmill is really it's a road to nowhere. It's a road to disaster. This is British data about effectiveness against mortality. And again, the effectiveness is only about 50% protection against death after 25 weeks. So just wanted to point out that we've been down this road with the CDC before. Tommy, it might be a little before your time, but not before mine. I remember this. In 1976, we had the swine flu pandemic. And so back at that time, the government projected 1 million Americans would die from the swine flu unless action was taken. The CDC said we needed a better safe than sorry approach. President Ford, no one knows how serious this threat could be. We cannot afford to take a chance with the health of our nation. Doesn't this sound just like Dr. Fauci? So this bill of goods has been sold before. So here's President Ford getting up to make his announcement. It was 1976. He was running for re-election, just like Trump was running for re-election in 2020. Ford felt that he couldn't afford to ignore the advice of the professionals from the government health agencies, because the media would beat him to death with it once people started to die. So he had to sign on to this vaccine program. This is exactly what happened in 2020 to President Trump, and with Fauci telling him that we had to have vaccines. So he was a pretty good sport about it, and he rolled up his arm and got his COVID vaccine. But one of the problems with this was that after about 45 million people had been vaccinated, a bunch of them were starting to come down with Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a neurological disorder causing muscle weakness and paralysis. And in fact, we've had a lot more Guillain-Barré with the COVID vaccines, but they've been a lot better at covering it up this time. I think they only had about 50 or 100 cases of Guillain-Barré when they called the whole thing off because they were getting too many complications of it. We've had 14,000 people die at least of the COVID vaccines, and they're still being mandated. So the summary here is that the vaccines are not safe, not effective, and they become less effective as time goes on. And you're more likely to get complications the more boosters you get. But the most important thing is that the vaccines are less safe and less effective than early medical treatment. We know that early medical treatment never kills anybody. And if you get treated promptly, it's very, very likely that you won't even be hospitalized, much less die. So when we look at the data, they just don't support mandatory vaccinations for all with a vaccine known to be lethal in many cases when we have safer, more effective, non-lethal alternatives. One of the, let me, let's see, can I opt out of this? Okay. Another thing I'd point out is we've had a lot of high profile cases of COVID among the vaccinated recently. We had Vice President Harris, who was all vaccinated and boosted, and she came down with it. Speaker Pelosi came down with it. The president's press secretary, Jen Psaki, came down with it. They were all vaxxed and boosted. So there's not much evidence that the vaccines keep you from getting COVID. They're not, they claim that they keep you from dying from COVID, but that effectiveness wears off after a few months. And in Great Britain, as I say, most of the hospitalizations and most of the deaths now are in the vaccinated. So another recent development of interest earlier this week, Dr. Fauci came out one day and said that the pandemic was over. And then what do you know, the next day he came out and said, well, no, it's not over. So what was that all about? Well, most people know from their ordinary everyday experience that there's really not much COVID going around anymore. So why are we still saying that there's a pandemic? Well, the reason is that the politicians need to have the pandemic continue because early on, the Secretary of Health and Human Services declared an emergency. And there's a statute that covers that. And once they declare the emergency, then they can do all kinds of things that they couldn't otherwise do. So if the pandemic were declared to be over, the government would lose a lot of powers that it now enjoys. And here in California, the governor has declared an emergency, and that gives him a lot of powers that he would lose. And if Dr. Fauci says that the pandemic is over, then the governor of California is going to lose a lot of his powers. So they got to keep the pandemic going for a little while until they can't get away with it anymore. One of the other sort of interesting features of this also as to why we need to have an emergency is that if the emergency were declared to be over, then there would be no legal authority to be giving anyone the COVID shots, because the COVID shots have not yet been actually approved. That is, they're still on emergency use authorizations. The FDA did approve the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines for adults, but not for children. So that vaccine that's been approved is called Comirnaty. And Pfizer is selling it in some other countries, but not in the United States. So if you go to get a COVID shot at the drugstore, you're not getting the one that's been approved. You're getting the one that is still under emergency use authorization. Well, why would that be? But of course, they don't tell you that the one you're getting is the emergency vaccine. They sort of imply that it's been approved, but then they don't tell you that you're not getting the one that's been approved. You're still getting the one that's on the emergency authorization. Well, why is that? Well, again, it's a legal problem. The vaccine manufacturers don't want to have any liability for all the people who are dying and getting heart attacks and strokes and Guillain-Barré syndrome and all that sort of thing from their vaccines. As long as they are using vaccines that are on emergency approvals, they're protected. You can't sue them for your complications as long as they're using the emergency vaccines. Now, once they're approved vaccines, if they could ever get those vaccines, the Comirnaty, if they could get that approved for all age ranges, not just adults, but even for small children, then they will fall under the protections of the Childhood Vaccine Safety Act, and they will have blanket immunity from lawsuit at that point. So that's why they are now pushing, and they're going to have a meeting next month at the FDA to push to get these unsafe shots approved for small children, not because they're safe or effective or even necessary for children, but the approval is necessary for the manufacturers, because otherwise the manufacturers won't put out vaccines for anybody. So we're really bogged down in a legal quagmire here, and people are getting things that are really not FDA approved, but they're being told that they're approved, and the manufacturers are making hundreds of billions of dollars peddling these. So the whole thing is really quite a mess. Anyway, let me stop there and let you get a word in here, Tommy.
I was gonna no, you did the Lord's work and did the podcast for me. I wanted to ask, so what are the realistic ways out of this? What could you do in office to realistically combat this?
Well, thank you very much. Yes, we've thought a lot about that. Clearly, we got to get the emergency declared to be over so that we can end what I call the Fauci dictatorship. Another wonderful development, of course, is Elon Musk buying Twitter. So now we can at least start to talk about this a little more. But what this has showed us is that the government health agencies, the CDC, the FDA, and the NIH are really not to be trusted. They've played a lot of legal games with us. They've misrepresented things. They told us that early medical treatment with hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin was unsafe and not effective, when that was an outright lie, and they knew it all along. And the reason they peddled that lie was because otherwise people would refuse to use the vaccines. If there was a safe, effective treatment, people wouldn't want the vaccines. So these are pretty, in my view, these are pretty corrupt agencies. And the question is what's to be done about them. Now, some of my friends think that if we change the leadership in those agencies, and which we wouldn't be able to do until we can elect a new president. If we could change the leadership in those agencies, they can be reformed. I'm less optimistic about that. Here in, excuse me, in Silicon Valley, we're very much aware of what we call corporate culture. And corporate culture tends to run from top to bottom. We saw that with Google recently, where a bunch of Google employees actually got picket signs and marched around the headquarters protesting that Google wasn't socially conscious enough. So changing things at the top doesn't necessarily work. Disney is the same story. A bunch of Disney employees let management know that they weren't socially conscious enough. And so Disney went and took on Governor DeSantis, and those Disney employees in Disney were out in Los Angeles. They took on Governor DeSantis, and I think everybody could see that he won that round. So corporate culture runs top to bottom. I'm not very optimistic that the CDC, NIH can be reformed as they are. I would probably radically restructure them. A lot of the functions that they perform really can be delegated to the states. Governor DeSantis has shown that he knows perfectly good and well. His state knows how to handle an infection and how to treat it, how to prevent it, and whether they need to lock down or they don't need to lock down. So I think a lot of this could be delegated to the states. So I would radically reform the CDC and the FDA. One reason that the pharmaceutical companies are so powerful is that they, as anyone knows who watches TV, they spend about as much money as anybody on TV ads. Well, when I was a boy, we didn't see those ads on TV, and that's because pharmaceutical companies were not allowed to advertise their drugs on TV. That only came later. They got a bill through Congress to allow them to advertise drugs on TV. So obviously that was pushed through by big pharma and big media. I think it's probably time to pull the plug on that. A lot of the ads are misleading at best anyway. The ads always show smiling, happy people. And then somewhere in the fine print and in the background, somebody's telling you about the adverse effects. It's very incongruous. So I'd get rid of the big pharma ad spend. Let's see, and on the NIH, here's an interesting thing. On the news, whenever they're doing a COVID story, they always talk to some expert who's a professor of infectious diseases at some prestigious medical school. Well, what they don't tell you is that the only way you get to be a prestigious professor at a prestigious medical school is because you've been very successful in bringing in NIH grant money. That's the only way you get promoted. At one time in my career, I had an academic appointment at Harvard. And it was perfectly obvious that the only way you moved up the ranks at Harvard was based on how much NIH funding you brought in. So all of these medical school academics, they're just on Tony Fauci's payroll. And if they don't toe the party line, their NIH funding is going to go away. So they're all terribly conflicted. they're all getting lots of money from the NIH, and most of them are getting a lot of money from the pharmaceutical companies. So to put these people out as academic experts is folly. They're just shills for Fauci and the drug companies. And so there's a lot that we could do to reform all this. Whether we've got people in Congress, in the House, and in the Senate who are willing to take on those bureaucracies, I don't know about that. They didn't show much backbone when we had this problem. They were all willing to defer to Dr. Fauci and let him become the dictator of the country. They were more than happy to vote for trillions of dollars of spending. And then, of course, the result of all that trillions of dollars of spending was now we've got runaway inflation from all that money sloshing around. Yes, it would be nice if I could get elected to Congress, but we'd need to elect a few hundred more in the process. And that may happen once people figure out that they're being scammed, and they demand change. If people are happy with the way things are going in this country right now, they should vote to re-elect the people who are already there. But if they want change, they need to start voting some people out and voting some new people in. So anyway, yeah, there's a lot of things that we could change both in the health establishment and in a lot of other areas of the government that have been taken over by special interests, as has the health industry. So we're going to have to see as this campaign rolls out over the next few months, which candidates want to step up and say that they'll change things, and are they really going to mean it or not? So I know my friend Brian Tyson down there in El Centro. If we can get him in there, he'd be another one. So I'm hoping. We'll see. We've got a primary here in California coming up in a month, so that's my immediate problem. Is I've got a bunch of people in my race, and I got to get through the primary. So, and if you don't mind a self-promotional plug, anybody who feels they want to support us, it's drfoxforcongress.com, and we could use all the help we can get. So you got any other questions for me, Tommy?
I'll put that link in the description.
Thank you.
To kind of circle back to the institutional reform and how you'd need a new president and hundreds of new members of Congress. It's probably correct. Without that, though, what is there anything that you alone can do if you get in, even if it's a minuscule change or effect? What
Well, of
alone
course,
could you do?
yes, if you're inside the halls of Congress, you have a lot more access to the other people in the
Sure.
Congress and in the Senate. So you get to go around and talk to people and speak up at hearings. I think there's a very good chance that the Republicans will take the majority in both the House and the Senate this next year, in which case the Republicans will be running the committees. Right now, all the committees are run by Democrats. The subcommittee on health in the House is headed by Representative Anna Eshoo of the 16th district here in California. And that's the district that I'm running against, and she's the incumbent I'm running against. So I try to remind people that she's the one who oversees Dr. Fauci, the CDC, and the FDA. And they might want to replace her if they're not very happy with how things are being run, because she is one of Dr. Fauci's biggest fans. She just gushes over him. She thinks he's God's gift to humanity. Obviously, I don't share that view. I think he's a dictator, obsessed with his power and his money, and a lot of the people I run into think even less of him. So I think we need to take control of those committees, and then we can start holding hearings. We can call Dr. Fauci and these other people to account. And at least some of them might decide that it's time to retire rather than having to put up with people like me asking them a lot of questions at these hearings.
Lastly, are you concerned at all about election integrity?
Very good question. And it's clearly a big problem around the country. It's been well shown that there are lots and lots of people who seem to be voting from the grave. Here in California, the Democrats control the legislature and the executive branch of the government. And so we have laws here that allow quite a bit of ballot harvesting. So they mail out the ballots, and particularly like in nursing homes and other places where they got big collections of people, who knows who's actually filling those ballots out and putting them in the mailbox. I was actually asked to be an election observer in the 2020 election, and I went down to the registrar of voters. What I saw looked above board, but it turned out that they weren't actually counting any votes that night. They had been counting mail-in ballots in the days before election day, and then the ballots cast on election day, they didn't count those on election day. They counted them in the days afterward. So having observers there watching the election, most of the counting isn't going to be observed. I think it's just sort of been set up that way so that it all happens out of sight. As you know, in France, they had a national election just a week or two ago, and the results were out within a few hours. Everybody in France votes on election day, and the results are out in a few hours. We used to do things like that here in the US. I suspect we probably should go back to something like that. And we do need a lot more investigation. Some states have done investigations. Arizona has looked into it. I think Georgia did. But obviously, we're not going to get the federal investigations into voting integrity with this current administration. But that is a big problem. I can't prove that there was voting fraud involved in the Biden election, but on the other hand, nobody could convince me that it's not a possibility.
Absolutely. Yeah. It seems to be the case. Closing thoughts, anything we didn't touch on that you'd like to touch on?
Oh, I can go on for hours, but I think elections end up being referenda on the people in power. And if people think things are going well, they tend to give them another turn at bat. And when things are going to hell in a handbasket, that's when they want to throw the rascals out. And all across the country, we're seeing that mood that people are very disillusioned about what happened in COVID. A lot of people died. A lot of draconian dictates came down. Businesses were closed. Kids were put out of school. A lot of parents had to quit their jobs to stay home and take care of the kids, watch the kids. College students lost years of their education. Inflation is completely out of control now. So there's a lot of, as you know, a feeling of discontent abroad in the land. All the polls show the worst, polls for incumbents, in modern history. So I think the people are in the mood to throw the rascals out. And we'll be able, hopefully, to take control of the House and the Senate next year, but we'll still have Democrats at the White House. We have a president who seems to take orders from the Easter Bunny. It's a disgrace. Um, uh, Obviously, he's not going to be running for re-election in 2024. I'm a little doubtful that he'll even make it to 2024. That he'll be there's such a political millstone around the neck of the Democrats that they'll want to replace him. But on the other hand, when you think about that, give it a little more thought, then you ask yourself, well, who could they replace him with? They have no players on the bench, ready to, come in and be the relief pitcher. So I don't see how Biden makes it to 2024, but I have a hard time seeing what replaces him. So we'll be in much better shape once we take the House and the Senate, but we're not out of the woods by a long ways. So we live, as they say, in interesting times. So those are, I guess, my thoughts as to where we're headed here, and we'll see how things play out.
Beautiful. Dr. Richard Fox, thank you so much, sir. I will put that link in the description. And as always, I'll email the link to you once it's uploaded. And I'd love to have you on again sometime.
I'd love to be back anytime you want, Tommy. I'd love to be back.
Awesome.
Good to see you, and
You as well.
Hope you feel better.
And thank you for carrying this podcast. You put the team on your back. I absolutely could not host an episode today. I'm so lucky that you took the reins. That is, I mean, Godspeed. You've gained some brownie points in my book. You did my job today. So I will absolutely have you back on. Thank you so much, sir.
Okay, I'll look forward to it, Tommy.
All right. Thank you so much.